so I'm Travis. I'm a speech therapist, and I also stutter. And with me is one of my friends for several years now, Dylan. So tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, first, I I I just want to thank you for having me on this, Travis, because I've been able to see your channel grow from pretty much the start, and um, it's been super awesome to see what it's come to now. And I already knew that from the start it was going to have the potential to be something pretty big, and I think it's already pretty big, and I'm excited to see h- how far it goes. But yeah, my name's D- Dylan. I am also a speech language pathologist, and recently graduated, and just started work, and have been working at a neuro clinic for about a month now. So yeah.
Yeah. For most people who don't know, speech pathology is dominated by about 95% females. So right here, the two of us make up most of the male speech therapists out there.
Mhm.
So yeah, so you stutter, so I will jump right into my first question of
Mhm.
roughly 15 questions, which is
Sure.
how old were you when you first started stuttering, and what were those earlier years like for you with stutter?
Mhm. Yeah, I can r- r- remember stuttering ever since I could learn to talk. But from what I've heard from my parents and other people that were around me, I was probably about like 5 or 6 when I started to kind of put, you know, l- longer phrases and sentences together. Um, and those early years were pretty hard for me. I think when I was really young, I didn't really know what it was yet, and um, I didn't really know how to feel about it because I was still just, you know, in that early z- z- development stage in my life. But then, as I got a little bit older, and I was probably like entering like young adolescence, young teenage years, when I was, consciously trying to make friends and things like that. It was hard. I didn't, I didn't really know how to make friends. I like walking up to people and being social, like on the playground, wasn't even like a thing to me. And thankfully I was involved in sports at a very young age, and so whenever I was on the playground, um I was able to kind of make friends that way, just by liking sports, um and so that helped. But yeah, and then it just seemed to get harder and harder as I got older.
Mm, mm. I also found myself using sports as an avenue to make friends
Mhm.
and kind of to show people that was a competent person because I I always felt like with my stutter, people wouldn't perceive me as competent.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
what was school like for you with a stutter, and did it ever impact your grades?
Yeah, school was hard. School was really hard. Like a lot of others who stutter, I would never speak up in class, and it was only when I absolutely had to. Um, I did everything I could to n- not talk in class, and um, for the most part, it didn't affect my grades. I did well enough where um, it wasn't hindered too bad. I remember doing a like some kind of testing where I had to read a passage, and I remember I already knew that wasn't going to go well because they were timing me, and it was also a comprehension thing, and so I was so focused on like trying to read it fluently that once they asked me about it, I didn't know what I just read. Um, and so that probably um, hurt my scores a little bit, but overall, my grades were fine going up through elementary school and then high school. Um, Once I got to high school, I would speak up a little bit more, but it was still more of the same. I didn't want to talk much at all unless I had to, unless I was having like a particularly good stuttering day where I felt more fluent, and then I would kind of take that opportunity to talk more because I knew that it wouldn't last. Um, and I also had a teacher who was super kind and thoughtful when it came to my stutter in high school. She was my marketing teacher, and she understood, how hard it can be to, try to in social settings like school when you have a stutter. And so she gave me options to do presentations that we had in that
Mm,
class, like after
mm,
school. Um, and it was really nice, and so um, but yeah, for the most part, school was tough, and then high school, though, I think um, since knew mostly everybody in my classes, they they just knew th- that I stuttered, especially like once I got into like my later years of high school, and then also with age, my confidence tend to get a little bit better as well. But yeah, for the most part, school was pretty
mm.
tough.
And you mentioned that one teacher that allowed you to do presentations after school.
Mhm.
Many of my teachers would let me do them one on one with them during lunch.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it feels very helpful when you are a kid and terrified of stuttering and being viewed as different by your classmates. So,
Hmm. Yeah, and back then too, like when you're that age, you don't understand that like putting yourself in those hard speaking situations like will make you stronger in the long run.
mhm,
And like in stuttering therapy, so much of it is like exposure, showing other people your stutter and realizing that most people don't have a negative reaction to it. But when you're in high school, um, like everybody might not have a reaction to it, but I would be like so in my head that I would just think, oh, they're thinking so and so about me, like I know they're judging me in their head. So like I couldn't even give myself the satisfaction that I just did something hard because like in my own head I was just like sabotaging it pretty much.
yeah, quite often when we're going through a challenging thing that takes up all of our mental bandwidth. Most people don't even recognize it, or really just don't care about it. So
Hmm.
we will wind up overdoing it way more than their people would realize.
Yeah.
Mhm. Oh,
Mhm.
you mentioned exposure therapy and stuttering therapy. To tell us about your history with speech therapy from childhood to present day.
Yeah. I remember getting speech therapy fairly young in elementary school, and um, I remember mm, getting taken out of class, and I didn't really know what it was for. I kind of knew, but I would just get taken out of class with one other kid, and we would go and play games, and I know I would get some free candy once in a while. Um, and so that was fun. And I always look forward to it because I would just get taken out of class. But at the time, it didn't really help. If it did, I didn't really notice it because I didn't even know like what we were working on. And then eventually, I stopped speech therapy at that age in elementary school because I didn't have an adverse educational impact. My grades were doing fine, and so I didn't get speech therapy until until so I was in about third or fourth grade when I last had it, and then I didn't have it again until like my junior or senior year of high school. And I went to a clinic in Spokane, and I did a few sessions and kind of learned about some different techniques. But I didn't participate in it long enough to really see any change. And then that's when I found out about the successful stuttering management program, or the SSMP, which obviously we know a lot about. But that was a program that, yeah, for those who don't know, that is at that time was a 3 week fully intensive, fully immersive camp for stuttering, and it was nothing that I've ever heard of at that time. And at that point, I think it was my senior year of high school, and I knew that I was going to be graduating and going off to college, and going through this really important um, life event, or just period of time in my life. And so I really wanted to be more confident with myself and find a way to kind of manage my stuttering. And um, that's what kind of brought me to that program. And then that had a super deep, super um, super great impact on me at that time. And then being involved in it in years after, as I got older too, um, really really helped me a lot, and helped me realize that tech techniques to kind of manage the severity of my stuttering are great. And th- there's definitely a place for that. But ultimately it was just my my mindset, and understanding that stuttering isn't a bad thing. And you can let it out whenever, and if it does come out, it's fine. It's, in the grand scheme of things, it's just who I am, and who I'm always going to be. And so, the earlier that I accepted that, um, the better off that I was going to be from there on out in my life. Um, and that program definitely help me accept that.
Yeah, there's a big shift and when you're a little younger and you stutter, to wanting to be fluent and wanting to never stutter again, and then going through speech therapy that when we were growing up was mostly based in, hey, let's figure out how to get you to speak fluently and not stutter, to
Hmm.
like more recently reaching a stage of, okay, well, if you do stutter, which you will at some point, that's okay too. And
Hmm.
that shift is just massive, I think.
Yeah, it's huge, and that's honestly the, the basis of what all stuttering therapy should be for, for people that are kind of in that young adult stage all throughout. Because obviously studying therapy is different when you're a lot younger. But yeah, as you get older, you know the the um the cognitive part, or just the mental side of it, really hits hits a lot of people hard who stutter as they get older. And it changes their life decisions. It changes some people's like whole course of their life. And so addressing that is definitely big.
For sure. Um,
Hmm.
how how's your stutter changed over the years? Uh, uh, or do you still stutter in a pretty similar way to when you first started?
Yeah, I think for the most part I stutter the same way. It's changed slightly, since mm, going through therapy and learning techniques. I think that has changed my stutter a little bit. But my stutter, just at its core, is just silent, kind of slightly repetitive blocks, um, like you've seen throughout this live, and then um, as you, as you've seen since you've known me, Travis, it's a lot of on sounds that don't have any airflow. For example, like P's and B's, stop plosives is what we call them. Those sounds just have it's me trying to say the first sound, and then it's just silent and still. And sometimes when I get stuck on words that have those sounds, I still get stuck in the same way, and I'm trying to kind of easily
Mm.
come out. And when I would get stuck when I was younger on those silent blocks, it would be like my eyes would be closed. You'd see a lot of tension around my face, and it was a stutter that kind of took a lot out of me, like physically, because I would be so tense trying to push words out. And then for other sounds like s's and f's that have or that require some airflow, I still stutter on those sounds, and instead of silent blocks, there'll be more drawn out kind of sound prolongations, as we call them. And so for the most part, my stutter is still the same. I think I've noticed as I've gotten older, I or restarts of as for me, the more sentence, the easier it is for it. And so I think naturally I kind of start and stop a little bit more, and my speech has some more kind of natural pauses in it, but it's still a stutter. And so yeah, I see that now, especially over the last few years of my life. And um, I did used to have a lot of ums and a lot of uhs, um, kind of those interjections or whatever you want to call them. And um, now I have those once in a while, but it's more just to help me kind of think of what I want to say rather than to avoid my stutter. So,
Mhm. Mm. Mm. Totally fair. And
mhm.
what's fascinating, at least to me, about stuttering is that every person has a different stutter. Uh,
Mhm.
Even though it's all kind of branched out of those three main ways. Like sometimes still have blocks. I
Mhm.
mostly now have repetitions, and still
Mhm.
you and me stutter completely differently, and you much more frequently can get out full sentences without much stuttering at all.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that stuttering does not impact your life like it does
Mhm.
mine, which I think
Right.
most people would not assume.
Right. Yeah, and that's why what you're doing with this page so great
Mm.
because helping to spread that awareness helps for when we encounter people who don't know a lot about stuttering, and they see the two of us and think, oh, like one s- s- stutters slightly less than the other, but that doesn't mean that on on certain days I have a hard time getting through any words and I'm stuttering from morning to night, or um, or how I think about my stuttering on a given day is um, could be m- much different than yours, regardless of um, how much we stutter in a given day. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your current level of acceptance with stuttering?
I've never had to put it in a scale like that before. Um, I would say it's pretty high. Um, I feel like I'm in a pretty good place with my stuttering. Um, I would say that on some days it would change slightly, but I would probably say probably around like an 8, like a 7 or an 8.
Nice.
Um, yeah, it's that's that's what I've been trying to work on, ever since I was a senior in high school and started good stuttering therapy. Front of my mind as I've gotten older and as I've matured along with m- my stuttering. Um, I've grown to accept. Yeah.
Nice. I'm glad that you mentioned as well that it varies day by day,
Hmm.
because some days or weeks we will have uh, more stuttering. Sometimes we'll have less, and that it totally impacts how we view it and our acceptance with it.
Yeah, most definitely.
Uh, what is one thing that bugs you about stuttering?
There's a few things. Actually, more than a few things for sure, as you know. But one thing for me is definitely talking in groups. Um, talking in groups of people who um, who don't stutter is hard because you you're trying to find like the right time to make a response, right? Like you want to be a part of the the group conversations, obviously, right? Um, and sometimes you might be around people um, who just talk fairly fast, or you talk, or you're with a bunch of people who just have a lot to say, and sometimes I don't want to have something I want to say that's responding to one person. If I try to say it and I get stuck for just a few seconds, then somebody else has already responded, and then what I was going to say doesn't really work at that time, and so it's like a cycle that kind of has to start back over, and then you kind of have to wait, and then it's kind of just like a cat and mouse game, or something like that, and then sometimes if I don't talk for a certain period of time, then I can get in my head about like, am I talking enough? Am I like right? And so talking in groups is hard, but I think it gets easier when it's easier when you're around people that you're really close with, right? Because then your stutter, I'm not thinking twice about stutter, then it's a little nerve wracking still, until you show them that you stutter, and then even after you show them, you're not sure how people are gonna react, and um, so yeah, definitely talking in groups is harder.
Yeah, that that timing for interjections gets difficult when everyone is competing to get their voice out there, and then we just take longer by default. What
Right.
is what's one positive aspect about stuttering?
Hmm. I would say that one, it helps spread awareness. Um, Anytime you meet someone new who doesn't know a lot about stuttering, but also I think it helps teach and remind people more about being patient. And we live in a world where everything is so go go go, and productivity, and starting something new, like everyone's always trying to keep it moving, right? It's all about trying to be efficient and trying to get through things as quick as possible. And when you talk with someone who stutters, I've met people who were strangers, and then we kind of have a quick conversation, and they'll say like, man, like it's kind of nice to not worry about like how fast we talk. Like we can just kind of sit and then just kind of be in the moment, and then it kind of helps slow people down a little bit.
Mm,
um I like that aspect of it a lot. um and to to go back to the awareness part, to kind of prove to people that you know how you say something isn't indicative of your your intelligence, how much you know what kind of person you are. It's just literally how you speak. It's just the motor aspect of how it comes out, and that's it. And so to kind of talk about it in that sense with people is nice because then it makes me feel better that one one more person now more about if they go and talk to somebody else that they meet who stutters, then they're gonna have more knowledge and more awareness and have more to talk about with that person, and then that person feel better. And so, yeah, that's what I'd say.
The more we could talk about stuttering, the more we stutter openly, the more normalized it becomes, for sure.
Exactly. Hmm.
What are your top feared words or feared speaking situations as a stutterer? And you already mentioned speaking in groups.
Yeah. In terms of situations, definitely speaking in groups with people who I don't know very well. Speaking in groups with people who I don't know well in a louder setting. That's like my my big thing because trying to you're trying to get to know people, and you're say if you're in a louder setting, and whenever I have to speak up naturally, I'm just more th- disfluent, and so that adds another layer onto it and makes it that much mo- more difficult for me. um but also, um meeting meeting new people who I know are going to be kind of like in my life, um, for like the foreseeable future, or for like my girlfriend's family. That's a little nerve wracking, or like friends of friends who like you're gonna see regularly. Meeting them for the first time, um, is still pretty nerve wracking for me because you don't know how they're gonna respond, and if they respond negatively, then it's like, well, shoot, I'm like, there's nothing else I can do here because I've shown them who I am, and then unfortunately, there's someone I'm gonna have to keep i- interacting with in the future, and I can't really escape it. So, um, that's another situation. Another one, um, sometimes like starting my job this year, was slightly feared, um, but overall at my job, I'm pretty. And that has been my feared word ever since I knew that I stuttered, and probably will never change because of the meeting people aspect, like I just mentioned. Um, but yeah, I mean, the sounds that I stutter on, like I mentioned earlier, sounds that require some airflow, like F's and S's, sounds that have no airflow, like P's and B's and D's, T's, sounds like that. Um, I would say that I have more feared sounds in that sense, but in terms of words, yeah, mostly just my name.
Yeah, my name is my biggest weird word too, and very
Mm,
commonly for most stutterers.
yeah.
Um, how do you prefer people handle your stutter when you talk with them?
That's a great question. Um, I just like when people. So I don't. I don't like when people talk about it too much. But then I also. I mean, that would be my main thing is um like when people when they get like overly positive when they see that I stutter and they treat it as like I just solved world hunger or something like that. Like I'm just like this like superior person, and they just think it's so amazing.
Or
Um,
or or when you're stuttering, you get the word out, and then they say, "Oh, good job." It's like,
oh yeah,
yeah, I mean, I can talk. It just takes me longer.
yeah, right. It's kind of like such a backhanded compliment. like,
Mhm.
um, yeah, no, that one's one of the worst ones there for sure. But I think if people if they if they acknowledge it, um, if they just acknowledge it in like a curious, just like natural way, and um, you know, like they might want to ask me questions about it and things like that, and that's perfectly fine with me. Like I think you know, I also don't mind if people just don't comment comment on it at all. Um, either one. There's not really one that I prefer over advertise to them that I stutter, and then they acknowledge it somehow. They say like, "Oh, like, well, that's cool. Like, I barely even knew. It doesn't even matter to me." Or if they just say, "Oh, like that's fine." Um, like if they just acknowledge it in some way after that, then we just keep it moving and not talk about it unless it's a topic of conversation. I think that would be probably my most preferred, and thankfully that's kind of actually kind of made fun of me because they working on memory, and so one time I got stuck on a word, and then I finally got it out. I started on it, and then she was like, "Oh, see, you forgot." And I was like, "I didn't forget. I always knew what I was trying to say, but it just didn't come out." Um, but
Mhm. Mhm.
but yeah, for the most part, I like when people just acknowledge it. If they want to talk about it more because they have more specific questions, cool. But I just like when it gets acknowledged, and then we can kind of just move on.
Mhm. Yeah, great. Um, has stuttering ever impacted your career choice for work?
I mean, being a speech pathologist, I think pretty directly. um, but but now to go back a little bit, like to when I was in college, because that's when I first really had to start thinking about that. Um, I I chose something sports related, and at first I wanted to do something in like the sports product management side, like work with sports brands. Um, because I was so active in sports growing up, um, I just thought it'd be cool to like work for Nike or something like that. Just like work for a sports brand and develop either sports clothing or sports equipment, something along those lines. And so when I was applying for colleges, I had that in mind. Um, and then I started to take classes and I started to kind of move through college, and then I found out that if I wanted to go like more of the business, like merchandising route, which is kind of what I was headed towards, that I was going to have to do a lot of talking. And so that kind of steered me away from it. But it wasn't the r- r- reason, the sole reason that I kind of moved away from like the whole sports merchandising thing was because I took a art class and it was terrible. I could not. I thought I had style. I thought I had like vision. I, I was in this class with uh, uh, other people who um, just were way better artists, and just they just knew a lot more about me than I did in that realm. And I just thought like, oh, like sometimes I buy nice clothes and I think I have like a little bit of style. Like I can jump into this profession. Um and yeah, I took one class that didn't go super well. I mean, I got like a C or something like that, or maybe a B minus. And so like if I wanted to keep going w- w- with it, I could have, but um after going through speech therapy and experiencing the stuttering camp, and helping out with that camp and helping other people work through their stuttering, it was one of the most re- rewarding and like one of the one of the times where I felt like most like at home with myself, and it just felt so natural to me, like helping other people who stuttered. And then so eventually that drew me towards where I'm at today. So
Yeah, you gotta surround yourself with like-minded people. There you go.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, two more questions, all right?
Okay.
Uh, if there was a magic pill to stop stuttering, would you take it? Why or why not?
Mm. You know, the first time that I got asked that question, I, s- I said no. And I thought it was a super like noble thing to say. And, but And it's I think, but to be specific, um, I wouldn't want to change like who I've been for the rest, like or for my life up until now. Like say if you took the pill, but then um, like you didn't know that you stuttered, like for for my whole or for my whole life up until now, then I would say no, because being a person who stutters has really helped me in a lot of different ways. It's, you know, going through all the therapy and, being in a better place now where I have a lot more acceptance on my stutter. I think it's taught me a lot of like self perseverance and a lot of like mental toughness and a lot of like life traits that I may or may not have at this point or have had as a younger adult if I didn't stutter. And who knows, right? Um, but yeah, if I could not stutter tomorrow and everything else would be the same, then then yeah. Um, but but yeah, it wouldn't change my profession or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, everything would just be easier.
I agree with you too. I would totally take the magic pill and be
Hmm.
so much happier for it. But I
Okay.
last question
Okay.
is what is your advice to their stutterers who are struggling, and what do you wish you were told as a kid to help with your stutter?
Yeah. I think to answer that question first, I would tell um you said what I would tell my younger self, right?
Yeah,
For
sure, sure,
that was the second part. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and then yeah, I'll answer that part first. I would just tell him that the hard and I know that it seems like you're never gonna make it out of this and you're never gonna be somebody who's worth something. But as you get older, um, just keep being you, keep being involved in things that you love, like football and baseball. Um, Never stop those things. Never stop hanging out with your friends and taking on opportunities to meet more. Um, and then eventually you'll meet the right people and you'll get involved in something that will help change your life, will help you make you a lot more ex- accepting of your stuttering. Um, it's because when I was younger, like, there were times where it was just so hard, and it's just, and then you just think like why even talk, like why even go out of the house, why even like you can get yourself so deep in that rabbit hole of negative self-worth that it can lead you to do some dangerous things. And um so that's what I would say. And then to other people who are struggling, um what I would say wouldn't be too far off. I would say that there there is definitely room for you to manage your stutter easier. Um, and whether you s- struggle to get every word out or you stutter once in a while, um, there is definitely good speech therapists out there. Um, and I would say that finding a good speech therapist, or even better, like a stuttering camp, or stuttering specific clinic, um, because then you'll get to work with people who have worked with stuttering for a long time. And then also finding a way, if you can, to get involved into some kind of support group. You know, who stutter, and um, you know, for the people that follow your page who stutter, um, it's awesome that they get to see somebody who is not afraid to put themselves out there and to show other people online what it's like to be a person who stutters, and to not care about what people are saying in the comments, and still posting pretty much every day like I'm sure you do, um and doing that kind of thing. It's it's great. And so I would say find a way to get involved with something in your area, or if it's not in your area, find something online, because you know in the digital age that we live in now, it's a lot easier to get in touch with different like-minded people, or people that are just going through something similar to you, studying s- stuttering, or whether it's something else, right? um and then, yeah, I mean, everything else that I said to my younger self, like, you're gonna have days that are really hard, and just you got to keep telling yourself, especially during those hard days, that it doesn't last forever. And sometimes you just got to take it one day at a time, and control what you can control. Don't worry about what other people say, especially if it's negative. um, People who are kind to you and who help to build you up, keep hanging out around those people. um, and yeah, just keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
Because it does get better if you're in that dark hole.
Yeah,
uh, yeah.
finding community that's going through the same thing that I'm going through has been very positive. So,
Mhm.
there are support groups out there. If if you Google them, there's there's a website called westutter.org that has loads of support groups across the United States. Some meet in person, some meet online. So find them and reach out, please. All
Mhm.
right, brother. Well, thank you for doing this. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. and the more that we can share stuttering, the
Mhm.
more normalized it becomes. So hopefully, our future children, if they do stutter, it won't impact them as much. So thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Travis. I'm super grateful to actually be a part of your social media now after seeing it grow, um and yeah, just happy to spread as much awareness as possible, and um yeah, just excited to see your page continue to grow, and excited to see the things that you're going to do for our community, you know, that spreads out to more than just spreading awareness. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you, um, and
yeah.
and and a thank you to the chat and and to my moderator, uh, E squared. Thank you, and Dylan, you're welcome
Mhm.
back and anytime. So I'll chat with you soon.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'll definitely be up for it.
Cool.
So, whenever.
All right. All right. Well, take care. Okay.
Thanks, man. You too.
All right. Bye.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. See ya.